Thank you very much, Jamie, and thank you, folks, for being with us. Hour number 2 of the Rick Amato program, News Radio 830 KHVH. Once again, the phone lines are now open at 521-8383, and it is one of my favorite times on the air because we get together with good men, good women who represent us as police officers with the Honolulu Police Department and more. And today, Brother Mark has some time off, but welcoming in to the newly upgraded, refurbished, state-of-the-art studio, which is going to be in construction next year. But in this studio, I want to welcome in Brother Steve Keogh, Vice President of SHOPO and Aloha. Brother.
Rick, good morning. Always happy to be here with you and your listeners. And, hey, happy birthday to you.
Wow.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Brother Rick.
My.
Happy birthday to you. Had to repay it. You do it. You did it for me.
Brother, that was awesome.
Right?
Yeah.
And I want my autographed copy of Playgirl 19, Nick? What do we have, 1986 here?
Yes. That is so scary. I just went through visuals. 2 cars just swerved when they heard that news.
Many more, brother. Many more happy birthdays. And,
Thank
the
you
studio
so
is pretty decked out. Fancy mics now, headphones. Fancy.
Yeah. Brother Rome's, man.
Fancy.
Brother Rome's, no doubt about it.
He's on it. I feel like he's been holding out on us for a while. He brought all the good stuff out, after the fact.
He was the tallest nail, got hit by that hammer by going, because I asked for new headphones. Remember, the headphones are so bad. So I said, Brother Rose, we got to get some. He goes, no, well, if we're going to get headphones. And he did the rest. It was awesome, man. Awesome. But thank you for that. And by the way, could you do a little Fly Me to the Moon?
That might be a little bit beyond my skill set. You have to do a duet with me.
Oh, God. Would love to. Brother Nick, aloha, good morning to you.
Good morning. Thanks for having us back, and happy birthday.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It's been a couple of weeks. I have stuff to chat about, but I want to turn it over to you fellas. Over the past few weeks since we've seen each other, what has stood out for you through the eyes of SHOPO department, and what you'd like to share?
Sure. So, Rick, let me talk about SHOPO for a second. So every 2 years we have elections for our local chapter boards. We're preparing internally for our general membership meetings that are going to be coming up in this month, the month of November and December. It gives the members an opportunity to get more involved with the union at the local chapter levels if they choose to do that. Those elections are every 2 years, and we have general membership meetings every year. So we're internally planning on that. From a community standpoint, Rick, I've been back on the road now. Bobby and I have been back on the road for a couple weeks now. Mm-hmm. As your listeners know, I work Urban Honolulu D1. And, with everything that's been going on in the Middle East, I just want to highlight a positive thing about this community. You have people on both sides, whether it's, you're on the Israeli side, you're on the Palestinian side. And there have been weekend sign-waving events. I don't want to call them protests, but there have been people that have come out in support of either Israel or Palestine. They're very passionate about their opinions, and they've been on the Atkinson side of Ala Moana Beach Park, and they've been, we'll say, bringing awareness to their cause. How's that?
Yeah.
And what I was very happy with, people were respectful. You had people that are very passionate on both sides of this issue, and they were on opposite sides of the street. And I can share with you, because I was there was no violence. There was no disruption in the flow of traffic. There was nobody trying to stop traffic. There was no assaults or altercations. And I just wanted to share that with your listeners, that I think one thing that is special about our community here in Hawaii, and I know I'm talking about Honolulu County right now, but these individuals, again, passionate issues, strong viewpoints on both sides, people were able to come out, exercise their First Amendment rights. They did it with a level of respect on both sides. And I just wanted to share that, Rick, with you and your listeners.
I'm glad you did, because there are a lot of headlines that are global and even domestic that are troubling, and I'll leave it at that. However, we did have our local Temple El Emmanuel in Nu'uanu, that gave cautionary tales, or at least ramped up security. And Brother Nick, you seem to be aware of that and how that is transpired.
A little bit, yeah. One thing I did notice about some of the synagogues out here is that in the very beginning of what happened in Gaza, they were requesting additional special duty from the Honolulu Police Department, which was something kind of rare. You'd never seen that job listed before, but essentially they have their services, and they wanted to make sure that they had some type of protection there. So officers were afforded the ability to perform special duty at certain synagogues that ask for it. But to Steve's point, we are lucky here in this community. Everybody always says it's a different place, it's a different culture, it's a different atmosphere, and I think to a certain extent that's true. These types of demonstrations, the Honolulu Police Department, we've seen them before. We've had them for certain political candidates on a presidential level in the past. We had quite a bit of them when we had COVID lockdowns, and there were individual concerns about whether or not vaccination mandates were appropriate or legal, and so on and so forth. And in all of those cases, with some very, very rare exceptions, but most of the time people here are very well mannered when it comes to that thing. They appreciate, or seem to appreciate, their ability to exercise their First Amendment rights and their ability to congregate and express themselves, and we appreciate that. But at the same time, I think if you talk to the department, you'd see, and Steve can probably back me up on this, we take it from a security standpoint very seriously. So it's not as if we're just waiting for something to happen. I think often you'll see officers out there, whether it's directing traffic, directing the flow of pedestrians, or just monitoring the situation to make sure it's a balanced, level, safe playing field. I think we're lucky, but at the same time, I've never seen our department take the it'll be all right kind of approach. Now, I think it's always been a serious sort of way to do business.
In order to sign, waive, or perhaps even protest, is it necessary to have a permit to do so? And do you check regularly or monitor the permit that has been applied for and granted, or is that maybe another department or agency?
So yes and yes. That's through, because it was in Alamona Beach Park. That's going to be through Parks and Recs. You don't apply for those permits through the police department. However, the police department is going to do their due diligence and just make sure that that's well received. And I have to say that actually we got courtesy phone calls to the Chinatown substation from the people that wanted to participate in the sign waving and bring awareness to their cause, to give us a heads up. So that was much appreciated. And to Nick's point, Rick, on each weekend there was an appropriate police presence there monitoring to make sure that the people there could exercise their First Amendment rights without anything happening to them. You see things on the mainland or other issues come up and people block traffic and they attack each other, and it just gets really, really nasty. And that has not happened yet. And I think that's real important. And your community is pretty well versed. The synagogues here may be hiring off-duty officers to provide security. That was something that the synagogues did throughout this country. And I think, listen, rather to have and not need than need and not have. So I support that. And again, this community, certain individuals, again, passionate on both sides, but never once was there violence or impeding traffic or any type of criminal element getting into these sign waving events, advertising, whatever side you're on.
So I'm going to harken back a little bit in time. The BLM marches, etc., which I think during COVID and in close proximity, if not directly under mandated lockdowns, etc. However, it'd be tough to find a more divisive and perhaps even volume-centric protests or demonstration or etc. And went, I wouldn't say without a hitch, but we had nothing along the lines of what we had on the mainland. I go back to 2006, which I invoked in some comments yesterday, is Senator Sam Sloan had created a Statehood Day celebration at Iolani Palace. And there was a very contentious opposition to that by Native Hawaiian and sovereignty organizations that descended upon. Very tense. But I can't recall anything in my decades of being here where it's ever gone past that, where there's ever been acts of violence or anything along those lines.
Yeah, and Rick, I think we're real lucky because I think there's a line that once you cross, you can't come back from, right? Like let's just take these positions, whether you're pro-Palestine or pro-Israel. If there was any type of conflict here, I think there would be scars created that would never fully heal. So I'm really thankful as a street cop that people have been respectful of others' beliefs and their First Amendment rights, and we haven't navigated that. We haven't gone down that road. And I think this community is special in that regard because, as you said, other communities, that was out the window.
So in a technical manner, if there is, and folks are getting a bit, not aggressive, but excited, and there comes some shoving or perhaps loud yelling, and police presence is there, and if an officer believes need to get in the middle, guys, let's take it easy, let's break it up, somebody pushes, somebody blocks or physically touches and contacts an officer, what does that constitute? And what is the discretion employed by an officer? At what is a level of a violation in a situation like that?
You touch or you hit an officer, you're taking a ride to jail. That's as simple as that. That's not acceptable. It's not tolerated. You do not touch an officer in uniform. Now, verbally, that's a different story. Verbally, whatever, we can take that. But any type of physical contact, you lay hands on a police officer, that is unacceptable.
Right. Nick, thoughts about that as well? Because things can happen. And I've watched other video of other situations where officers, I mean, you're in the middle of it. You're in the middle of this, and there's pushing and all of that. And I'm just curious as to at what level. But as you said, you come in contact, that's it.
We're not talking about a bump or something like that. This is where you are actively attempting to either prevent an arrest, you are actively attempting to harm an officer in whatever capacity. And just to be clear, we had none of that here. But to your point, the police need to keep control of that crowd. And if that behavior is tolerated, that leads to other people possibly thinking that's acceptable.
Got it. If individuals find themselves in a situation like this, or just in public, general public, and there is an altercation, verbal altercation, at what point does profanity and being offensive cross the line into actual terroristic and or incendiary language that can be prevented legally?
I think you're bringing up an interesting topic, and that gets pretty complicated. I would say it's really on a case-by-case basis. Obviously, if there's some outward attempt to assault people, damage their property, harm them, something along those lines, then obviously we have something very overt that we can deal with immediately. But at the same time, as we all know, as we've seen on television or maybe even seen in person, getting a little rowdy at demonstrations is a bit par for the course, right? So as law enforcement, one of the things that we have to do is constantly monitor and then assess. I think in certain situations, every officer understands that, there may be a bit of a shoving match. You may have to use a little bit of physical force to separate people or get crowds to disperse or so on and so forth. Whether or not cases are made against people for assaulting police officers really comes down to what those people actually did to police officers as individuals. The last time that I received any training along those lines was in 2011, preparing for the APEC summit in November. Steve, you might remember that. And that's when our department actually geared up pretty heavily, anticipating issues from what would have been back then. I guess the closest thing that we have now would be like Antifa, anti-establishment type organizations. Some people might call them anarchists, quote unquote, or maybe even, sorry, no offense, but to an extreme communists. The department ramped up quite a bit then. And we were all trained essentially to deal with those kinds of situations and the most basic level of dealing with it was in riot control, crowd control. Luckily, APEC didn't even get close to anything like that whatsoever, so we were pretty fortunate. But we were also very vigilant the entire time. We had trained for, golly, a year maybe? Does that sound about right?
Yeah, I was on the bikes at that time, so we had a different form of training with the motorcades and the escorts.
Yeah, but leading up to it. But, again, it really is just a matter of what physically happens, so we just have to sit and watch and wait.
I don't want to bring in so much of a legal, lawyerly question, but confrontations do take place. It could be anything on the roads with a road rage incident, something along those lines. Yeah, I swear to God, I'm going to kill you, man. I'm going to kill you if you don't. If you invoke something aggressive like that, has a law been broken? And would the recipient of that message, could they take that legally to be an overt threat where they believe their lives are in danger and they could take steps to defend themselves?
I don't mean to give a general answer to your specific question, but it depends.
Okay.
I want to remind everybody, and I know we've said this on the show before, if you can avoid a confrontation, that's the way to do it. I don't care if you're the baddest individual on the planet, you have training in martial arts and this kind of thing. It's really just best to walk away, because words can lead to criminal charges, Rick. If you tell someone that you want to kill them, now there's other factors in this, and how you do it and how many times you say it and what your body language is, but you could be getting yourself into criminal trouble if you make statements like that to someone when you're upset, right? It's not just about what you do physically. It is what you say verbally.
Understand.
Got to be careful with that.
What's the statute of limitations? Because when Aaron Rodgers was quarterback of the Green Bay Packers, every 5 minutes, Rodgers, I swear to God. No, I guess statutes ran out.
Well, sure. Well, as a Bears fan, Rick, I can appreciate your plight. You know what I mean? So I get it.
All you had to do was say, I appreciate your plight.
I appreciate your plight.
7:26 in the morning. Glad you're with us here. I want to thank George for your patience. And where are we? 7:26 in the morning already. I'll just put the two breaks together. Don't want George to wait any longer. Gentlemen, the brand new headphones are going to be utilized as we check in with George Hawaii Kai. Thank you for your patience, George. Good morning.
Hey, good morning, guys, and compliments to both of your guests. They're very articulate and they're clear. Even though some of their answers are vague, they must be, and that's just the way the law is. Now, with regard to the disorderly conduct, I would think a police officer being confronted, one of the elements is the words have to be fighting words generally, and the threats have to be able to be accomplished. So if I say I'm going to kill you and put you in a teapot, well, that's not going to really work out. But if you can perceive of the threat as potentially being accomplished, then I think you have to move to action as a police officer. That's my opinion. Or if the person's conduct is drawing a crowd, or there are juveniles that may be in proximity to this person or this event. So I think those are all considerations. But the reason I'm calling is on this crab case. I read it this morning. Officer was suspended 99 days. This officer was at one point given a certification of accomplishment when he apprehended a knife-wielding person named Silva. Subsequently, Silva dies during the apprehension, or as a result of the apprehension, of a cocaine-induced delirium. It's quite normal. After that, years later, he is in a bar, and another person named Silva, and this detective, now a detective, gets into an altercation. Is this Silva, the second Silva, related to the first Silva, or if you guys know? I'm just curious. Thank you, Rick, and gentlemen, thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much for the call, your patience, and gentlemen, responses to George today.
Sure. So go ahead, Jake. Yeah.
First of all, when it comes to disorderly conduct, you have a point. Often, one of the things we have to take into consideration when enforcing that particular statute is the environment in which the situation is occurring in, whether or not somebody's actions is drawing a crowd, whether or not it's disrupting the world around them, whether or not people's lives are essentially being inconvenienced by whatever the person is doing. Often police officers have to play referee to arguments between people all day long, not just domestic arguments, but arguments between people that are, just fed up with each other or just randomly run into each other and have a bad day. And you're absolutely right. There is a difference between what somebody says, a perceived threat, and then the actual ability to carry out a threat. And those are also things that we have to take into consideration when we get to a scene and we start investigating. I think we spent a lot of time in the past talking about all of the different steps that officers have to go through when they get to a scene. Making a scene safe is the first priority, and then tending to anybody who's injured and then investigating after that. So it's a complicated situation. As far as the crab situation goes, I'm sorry. I would recommend that we just don't pass any comment on that at the moment. I have a feeling this may have to do with some arbitration or litigation that we're going through on the union side regarding a member. And as far as this relationship to a Silva person goes, I'm sorry, sir, I just don't know.
There we go.
No, George, thanks for calling in. Appreciate your participation. And I think some of the comments you made were insightful. A couple things, you're right. If someone says, I'm going to kill you with my teapot, it's probably not accurate. We have a couple of different things with HRS, right? You have disorderly conduct, and that usually has to do when people are acting the fool out in the community. Then you have different forms of terroristic threatening in the first and second degree. Then you have harassment. So when we have these discussions, Rick, verbal, this kind of things, as a supervisor, as a patrol officer, you're thinking, okay, what do I got here? Do I have a TT type case? Do I have an harassment type case? What, to George's point, was this something said off the cuff? Was it said repeatedly? Does someone really have access to do this? So, George, you were pretty insightful in your comments, and I'll echo what Nick just said. There's certain things we can't comment on, and I'm not familiar myself with any of the Silva correlation on that.
If folks would like to learn more and connect with SHOPO, best way to do it?
Sure. Please come visit us at shopohawaii.org. From our platform at shopohawaii.org, you can reach us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.
It is a delight. The SHOPO Hour underway, and it's already halfway done because it's 7:31 in the morning. We'll take a very short break. When we come back, more topicality, more importantly, your telephone calls at 521-8383. Welcome back. The SHOPO Hour continues, 7:36 in the morning. Brother Nick, Brother Steve, in studio with us. Brother Mark will be back next week, and we always shout out and give aloha to Brother Bobby. It is the SHOPO Hour. 521-8383 if you would like to be a part of the program. I don't have all the details, but there has been court decisions in regard to sensitive places, where courts have decided that there will actually be a return or expansion over what the law locally had been passed statutorily. So I do know that, for instance, previously banned from beaches, now beaches are allowed with carry permitting. I mentioned to our friends in the 6 hour a headline that alluded to more firearms in emergency rooms and hospitals. And I'd just like to turn it over to you. Brother Steve, I got you, brother, but yeah. I'd like to hear what you guys take.
So we've had cases like that in urban Honolulu with Queens and Straub being the medical facilities that people get transported to. With the concealed carry permits now being in place, there are scenarios where people can be involved in some type of traffic collision and they're injured and they're hurt and they need to get transported to the hospital with their firearm. It's going to be identified maybe by EMS personnel. So basically what we've been seeing is the hospitals will give us a call indicating that a person came in via 1010. That's our code for for ambulance, and then we will verify. How's this? The patient's care is most important, but we will do some investigation into, is this individual supposed to have this firearm, and if they are not in a mental state to get it, we will take it for safekeeping, and then that individual can get it back later. On this topic, I do want to remind all of our friends that do have the concealed carry. The firearm that you're carrying on your person is the serial number and the model that needs to be on your card.
Yes.
Okay, we're running into situations where individuals, and this has happened now. This is legit.
Right.
Individuals are getting into accidents and they have the firearm that is on their CCW, but there might be an additional firearm present. And obviously, you can transport firearms to and from, the range and getting repair. But just a friendly reminder: if you have that training and if you have your concealed carry license, please make sure the firearm you're carrying is the one that is listed on the identification card.
Got it. And that's a good point.
Yep.
Without a doubt.
Yep.
Brother Nick, thoughts?
Sure. So just to build on what Steve had to say, a concealed carry firearms permit, again, it's specific to a particular firearm by serial number. So if for some odd reason there's an issue with somebody who is permitted but not carrying the weapon that they're supposed to be carrying, or something to that effect, the department's remedy to that situation may be essentially to suspend the licenses of all the permits that person has for their firearms. It's probably going to be the punitive action that's taken against them. I'd like to say that, if you do have a concealed carry permit and you do get into a situation where you have to be taken to hospital, you're going to go somewhere where you think it's not appropriate to take the firearm, and there's law enforcement there is nothing wrong with saying, hey, I'm permitted for this. Can you hold on to it while I get admitted to the ER, something to that effect. And if memory serves, I think the department is just shy of 1,000 concealed carry permits. But because, as Steve said earlier, the permit is specific to the firearm, that doesn't necessarily mean that there are 1,000 people out there that have concealed carry permits. That just means there are 1,000 firearms that are permitted to be carried concealed. So you may have a person who has multiple permits for multiple firearms, and it's legal for them to do that. So to say, are there roughly 1,000 people who are permitted in the city and county of Honolulu? No, not necessarily, but there are about 1,000 permits issued so far.
If there is an admission of an individual to the ER suffering from a gunshot wound, are you automatically notified?
Yes, so that's actually statutory in law.
Okay.
Hospitals, clinics, physicians, and so on, anytime that somebody has incurred some type of an injury that looks like it's the result of an assault, whether it be a physical assault or an assault with a weapon or even a firearm, it's a mandated reporting type situation. So it's not uncommon for us to get called to emergency rooms all the time. And we've seen the gamut. Stephen can probably tell you we've seen everything from we have a 2-year-old here who we think has been abused by their parents, all the way up to somebody just came in and dropped off somebody who's been shot.
Gotcha. By the way, I want to thank you. The frontline work, and I talking to my friends. Your appearing on the program helps us understand the breadth of the responsibilities that you have as officers and the wild range of the encounters that you face, situations you deal with, the different types of personalities, all the way from someone who is respectful and compliant, all the way to somebody that will fight you, that will battle you, that will take even worse means to prevent their arrest or apprehension. And I hope that friends that are listening now and beyond are looking at this through that view plane. Because just this conversation about being first responders to any report of injury, assault, etc., and then following up, and then etc., etc. That's just one microcosmic area that you have to deal with. We're treated in the news to reports that happen, and it's oftentimes not counterbalanced with, yes, there's crime, and yes, there's investigation, but it's not counterbalanced by the positive, uplifting communal stories that are rampant. I came across a piece where two officers responded to I'm not sure, a care call or welfare check, I think. Is that the term? And they came across an older lady in her 80s, and neighbors were concerned because oftentimes she may wander from her home, she may leave her doors open, and things of that nature. Two officers did a check and found, unfortunately, that, yes, age has encroached upon this woman, but they learned that she had two sons that lived in the same town that never visited, never checked, never ensured that she was okay. She had no food. There was pretty squalid, unhygienic conditions. And she even lamented to the officers who responded, I don't know why my sons don't visit me. And these officers responding and listening ensured she was secure. And then they went to the grocery store. Officers went and did some shopping on their own. Rotisserie chicken was one of the highlights. Soups and basics and things that this woman would have a full fridge to last her about a week. And when I read about this story, that's the underreported story. And it just frustrates me that we're not treated to the stories of the kindness and the outreach and the thoughtfulness and the caring that our officers exhibit every day, but we never hear about it. So that's why I thank you for being with us, to help us get more of a balance of what our law enforcement officials, yes, officers, yes, but what our friends and our neighbors are doing on our behalf.
Well, Rick, we appreciate the opportunity to be on the platform. I try to share that with you and the listeners as much as possible. It kind of, us being on the radio show, I hope humanizes the uniform and the badge that we wear. And it makes people feel more connected with the cops that just want to go out there and serve and protect in all the different counties. Yeah. And just to, if I can circle back on a couple of topics that you brought up very eloquently. As far as our relationship, we have a fantastic relationship with the hospitals, the security staff, the ER personnel. They call us regularly. A couple things about why we would get called to an ER: a gunshot wound, a stab wound, a possible sex assault that someone is coming in, a sex assault. As Nick alluded to, anything related to domestic violence, abuse. These doctors and nurses are on it. They're going to do some investigation, and if they feel there's any type of stuff that went sideways, they're going to call us, right? The second thing, too, Rick, about some of the older kapuna in the neighborhoods, we get regular calls and about we had a call recently where an elderly woman couldn't remember what bus she needed to take back to get home. We had another call just the other day that an elderly woman forgot where she parked her car in the mall. So there is definitely a humanistic side to what we all have: parents, grandparents, and aunts and uncles, and we just get in there and we get it done. And as far as courageous stuff, Rick, what was fresh on my mind is, we saw the footage from the body cams of the Maui officers during that fire. And even with me being on the job, it was very compelling to me to see what they were trying to navigate as everything around them was burning. And you talk about things that are done courageously. And I just, again, if you haven't seen some of those body cam images of what our brothers and sisters on Maui were dealing with, and just the split-second decisions that need to be made, the life or death, trying to get people to leave their homes that don't want to leave, and circling back and doing the job while your own property, while your own home is burning. If you haven't seen some of those videos, please do. And again, Rick, thank you for always backing the Blue and supporting the men and women in law enforcement. We appreciate you very much.
Absolutely. And many, many thanks. It is already 7:49 in the morning. Next week, the SHOPO Hour will be 7 hours. We're going to go from 7 a.m. until 3 in the afternoon. I don't even know if that's the right math. But we will return for the remainder of this SHOPO Hour. All right, it is the home stretch, if you will, with the SHOPO Hour. Brother Steve, Brother Nick, Brother Mark returns next week. Wow, it's Monday. Oof, already. All right, if you don't mind, fellas, we have a few minutes remaining. If I could, I mentioned news cycle and hearing, seeing, watching. There's been a whole spate of violent incidences, which, according to reports, culminates with 12 attempted murder investigations in less than a month. That was the number that was gleaned from local news. When we hear this number, what should we, as the public, really take from it? Is crime really on the increase? Are they crimes that are being reported? Is it an increase in interaction and calls and responses by officers that are contributing to the number? How would you recommend that we absorb this type of data?
So from my point of view, I don't want to downplay the importance of these situations. They are very compelling situations, but at the same time, they seem to be a bit of an anomaly as far as them all happening at one time. So I take them very seriously. I don't feel comfortable saying there's an uptick in anything right now. Okay. My gut instinct is that there are just particularly what we like to call bad times or bad days out there, and this may be one of them. Again, no offense to any victims in those situations. We take every single situation very, very seriously in this department, especially when it comes to person-on-person crimes like that. But I don't have any clear indication from my point of view that this is something that's growing into some gigantic problem that's going to snowball out of control.
Okay. Brother Steve, thoughts?
No, just that the recent stuff that we heard about, bad guys, people made bad decisions, and they were taken into custody, and they're going to get their due process in court. So a lot of some of these attempted murders, we have found the person that did that. So I'm with Nick on that. I wouldn't read into it too much that everything's going to hell in a handbasket. It's just, listen, we're a safe big city for the most part, right? And unfortunately, we have bad people that are going to do bad things from time to time, and it's the cops on the street, the detectives. Our job is to bring those people in if they need to be held accountable, and then the justice system takes over.
There are some municipalities that are reconsidering right turn on red because there is an uptick in pedestrian fatalities and incidents. Nothing that I've heard from here. Is this something on the radar at all? And would you have any thoughts about red light, right on red, contributory to our pedestrian safety?
I'm sorry. So just to repeat it.
Sure.
Legalizing right on red, or
so being able to make a right turn on a red light, which we have. There are municipalities that would like to stop that.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, because of those reasons. Is that something that would be contributory to helping with pedestrian safety? Is it an issue here at home? And just thoughts on that particular topic?
Sure. So, an individual point of view, again, I think it's worth consideration. Absolutely. One of the things that I think everybody needs to do driving nowadays is just take a little bit of extra time and stopping at intersections and making sure that intersections are clear before you actually make a turn or enter them. That's a pretty big deal. I think we all see too many people that just roll right through them without paying attention to what's going on around them. So it's definitely a contributing factor.
Could you just give me a dash cam and I will bust every one? Because I don't know, man. I see it a lot in our district, Brother Steve.
Yeah, what I see, Rick, specifically when I'm off duty, not in the police car, is pedestrians take unnecessary risks.
Mm-hmm.
I see people entering a marked crosswalk when that hand has stopped flashing. The hand is solid, which means don't go into the roadway. I see pedestrians taking unnecessary risks, whether it's crossing through the middle of the street, whether it's going into the crosswalk at the wrong time. I understand we have to hold accountable those driving the motor vehicles, but we can't forget that when it comes to pedestrian safety, it's not just about the people driving the cars.
Yep.
It's the pedestrians themselves making intelligent decisions about their personal safety and not putting the public at risk.
And I'm going to say, amen, brother. Amen, amen. It is, we're coming right up to the top of the hour, believe it or not. My goodness. At 521-8383. Just a little bit of a change because we're entering the holiday season. We're just a couple of weeks away from Thanksgiving. Holidays will kick in. What is, if you could share, any protocol changes for coverage during the holidays? Are there holiday schedules? Is it based on seniority? Is it by request? How do you still effectuate good coverage during the holidays?
Holiday coverage right now is just sort of an everyday sort of thing. New Year's Eve is always an exception. I think you'll always find that patrol elements that work at night, especially on New Year's Eve or New Year's morning, are going to have a lot more coverage and a lot of extra elements out there. One thing I would like to say about the holiday season that's coming up real quick, there are a lot of DUI roadblocks out there. So I would highly encourage the public not to drink and drive because there's a much better probability that we're going to catch you.
Good. Brother Steve, holidays?
Yeah, so with holiday staffing, as far as patrol officers coming to work, certain days, as Nick alluded to, are going to have more increased staffing. But it's kind of business as usual. If cops are scheduled to work the holiday, they come in to work that day, and then they would get another day off or compensated for working on the holiday per the collective bargaining agreement with an increased wage that day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
How do we connect with you?
Sure. Again, please come visit us at shopohawaii.org. From our platform right there, you guys can reach us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.
There we go. Brother Nick, thank you so very much.
Thanks, and happy birthday again.
Oh, thanks again. Thank you. Brother Steve, thank you, sir.
Thank you for having us, Rick. And if I could just give a special recognition to somebody within our community that's really backed the blue, I want to take time to recognize Brother Lane Uchimura. He's an entrepreneur and business owner within the community, and he took it upon himself to organize a golf tournament that benefited our benevolent fund. His participation generated $10,000. Also want to thank our retired detective, Teddy Coons.
Thank you so very much, gentlemen, and thank you for the shout-outs.